Hiring managers generally spend 3 seconds, 6 seconds, maybe 10 seconds on reviewing a resume, your resume. They're looking for one thing, and the problem is most of the time they don't get to see it. My name's Paul Swanwick. I've been in recruitment for more than 22 years and influenced over 1,000 hiring decisions. Let's get into it. When a hiring manager reads your resume, they're not actually thinking about you. They're thinking about a critical problem that they have to solve to make themselves look good in front of other people who they report to, who matter to them in the business. So they're not assessing your resume to understand what your life story is. They're looking for that one thing, which is this person going to solve the immediate problem that I have right now? When we think about what a hiring manager wants, we need to create a solid argument for them to want to interview us. That argument is not done through a career history by itself. Often we'll start a resume by creating a career history, and that's great, but it's the basis for something. It's not the argument itself. What we're looking to do is put ourselves in a position where the reader, the hiring manager, looks at our resume and is already convinced that we are somebody they should be talking to. That's the difference between an argument and a career history. Therefore, you are a product. So the product description has to be something that's so convincing that they look at you and think, this person is not like the 500 other applicants that I've seen. I need to meet this person. And that is especially true if you are earlier in your career or a graduate, because you have not yet probably gained enough experience in a particular industry or a particular technical set of skills to be noticed in your own right. So you have to think a little bit more about what are the benefits of you as a product versus what are just the features. The career history and the job description are the features. The benefits come from when you start describing how you have influenced outcomes throughout the limited experience you've had so far. It doesn't have to be in the corporate sense. It can be anywhere from any job that you've ever had. Those behaviors are often seen as transferable, and typically when we're looking at hiring people with less experience or no experience at all, we're actually looking at translatable behaviors that come in and are able to influence the outcomes that we need them to in this role. So here's a generic opener. This is not very good because it's something that could literally be about anybody. It doesn't really tell us anything about the individual person behind this resume. Now, here's something more specific. Do you see the difference? Do you see the difference in how this one actually talks about a person, somebody identifiable and unique, versus the previous one, which could have applied to any particular applicant, and that could be 1,000 applicants, especially in the sorts of roles that you may be going for? The difference might be if I'm trying to describe Career Hijack in one sentence to appeal to people. So I could say, Career Hijack is a digital education platform for job seekers. Okay, great. Or I could say, Career Hijack actually helps people move from interview to job offer when they're struggling to get anywhere. Now that's a little bit different. Audibly, you hear a benefit rather than just hearing a feature. I want you to think like that when you're starting to put your resume together. Not just in the job itself, but on everything you put on there. Achievement excavation is one of the most important exercises that I've done with people right throughout my career. The problem we often find is we underestimate what we have achieved. And that's not because we haven't achieved anything or we haven't achieved anything of note. We've never really sat down and thought about what an achievement really is, what the outcomes are. So we're going to have to sit down and put some real time aside and think about what it is that we have influenced, what problems we've solved, what outcomes we've gained, what projects we've successfully completed. We're looking at if we've saved money or we found opportunities to make money. We've looked at what our targets are. Have we met those targets or have we exceeded those particular targets? Have we created something that's useful for other people around us in the business? And can we tangibly measure what that use is? Again, how has it helped that person? Has it saved them time? Has it made them money? Has it saved them money? Think about what your influence has been outside of just what your job description is, and what have you done that's been useful to people in your organization and maybe outside the organization. This is an exercise that will take an hour, it could take 2 hours, but it's so worth doing because when we have this cachet of achievements and make it as extensive as possible so we can select the best ones, when we have this cachet of achievements, it sets us up for everything else that's going to follow throughout a job search process. When we're coming up with these achievements, it's important to make sure that they are measurable in some way, shape, or form. It might appear difficult at first, but if you sit down and really think about the impact that it has on your business from a numbers perspective, whether it's a financial perspective, whether it's a time perspective, or whether there is some way to measure the percentage change of a particular process or a particular system based on what you've done, that's what we really want to see. Hiring managers are always trying to attract people that can generate specific outcomes. This is now going to change the language of how we're communicating with our resume. Now, what we don't want to do is just add to the list of duties more bullet points of achievements. We want to replace the job duties with the list of achievements. However, it might well still be worth having a one-liner under your job title, which just lists some of the key duties as one words, just so people get an understanding of what the remit is. However, on page 1, right in the middle, should be your last or current job and all those wonderful achievements. Refining the resume a little bit more, we're going to look at what doesn't need to be on there. Remember, the resume is going to get you the interview. It's not going to get you the job. You're going to do that work from when you meet the hiring manager. Look at the resume and think about what doesn't add any value, what does not need to be on there. I'll go through what I think needs to be on there as an absolute minimum and probably a maximum too. Obviously, your name at the top with your phone number and your email address, and probably your location where you live. Okay? A short sentence at the top about what your goals are. Now, I want to avoid generic summaries. Maybe I didn't cover this before. However, I don't want something that leaves no imagination, but it has to be short, maybe 3 or 4 sentences maximum, but make it sharp. And if you know what you want, put it on there. If you know what it is you're trying to get from your next role, put it on there. I want you to avoid trying to be a people pleaser. What we don't want to see is things like, I want to use my skills and abilities to help my employer achieve their outcomes. Sure, but that's a given in any job. We all want people to be part of the overall solution. However, be specific about what you want, because that signals a level of ambition or a level of clarity into your future. That is seen as a positive by pretty much most hiring managers and recruiters. The other things that I think should be on a resume, obviously, is the job history to a point. Probably go back 5 years or the last 3 roles. That's all you really need, because you're not going to be hired off anything previous to that. Certainly have the chronology of the jobs in one-liners, but you don't need to go into full blown out achievement list for every single job you've had. Education is important. Now, depending on where you are, it's probably going to be something you put just before where your career history starts. Keep it simple and short, one-liners. I don't want it taking up half a page. All we really need is probably school, tertiary, and anything that's relevant to the job you're going for. So it should just be the qualification, the institution, and the year you obtained it. And that's all you need. Put down some of the software that you've used. If you're in more technical roles, you might want to elaborate a bit on how you've used it. The most simple example is when you put, say, I don't know, use of Excel. Actually say what you do with it. It doesn't need to be a long line, but intermediate Excel can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So state the level of competency with which you use it. An example might be, using macros in VBA to create, reports on X, Y, and Z. Okay, so at least it gives somebody an idea of what your comfort level is. Again, being specific can really, really help you. And that's all you need. You don't need to put your references on. That'll come later. You don't even need to say references available on request. We all know that's the case. And you're probably not going to get a job offer without getting references anyway. So don't worry about wasting space with that. If there's anything you think you might want at the end and are questioning on, then put those in the comments and I'll answer them. But for me, they're the only things that we need in a resume. So the resume now is tighter, it's shorter, it's more impactful. It makes an argument for what you can do in the future. It's not a summary of what the past has been. Two distinct differences, a history and an argument. You're now moving towards being unique and making a much greater case for getting you an interview, which is the sole purpose of any resume. If you want to go deeper into this, the link to Career Hijack is in the comments.